effectively.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So Terry and I were hopping around room to room. I noticed a lot more lively, confident, let's forge ahead conversations today. I was especially excited when people would ask how to do things that weren't in the instructions. So like one group I was in wanted to know if you could list from the database just time and velocity rather than getting the whole thing, and rather than getting one at a time, could you do two? I did not know how to do that. So I went and Googled it with the group and got to demonstrate how you go about Googling these things. And you can even see at the top of my my Chrome window here, all of the stuff I had to Google to help people. And so this is what I have to do in class, is when the students want to know how to do something cool, I say, that's really neat. It should be able to do that. And if it should be able to do something, chances are somebody has a tutorial about it or a Stack Overflow page about it or something about it out there. But I was really excited to see people wanting to take this sheet today and kind of run with it in a bunch of directions. Harry, what about your observations?
I would say the same observations. And if I'm imagining what I would like that to look like in a high school classroom, if my students are generating the questions versus me generating all the questions and providing the answers, that's kind of what we're targeting. And I really appreciated the way groups were collaborating and making some use of that driver idea. I know it's tricky with adult learners, but people were doing things independently on their own notebooks, but they were also communicating with the person that was sharing the screen. So I saw a lot of collaboration in addition to curiosity.
Let's see, and then we did have a couple of questions here in the virtual parking lot. So one was, when installing, not importing new libraries using pip, do you need to run that command every time you run the notebook? So this question is delineating between two processes. One is the pip install, which is saying, Jupyter, I promise you there is a library out there that you don't know about yet. I want you to install it. And then importing is saying, I want you to bring that library in. You notice we didn't have to pip install Pandas or Matplotlib because those are so widely used. They're hardwired in to DeepNote. DeepNote already knows what those are. But the OpenPyXL, that one's not quite as popular yet. So that one has to be pip installed. And so the question was, do you have to do the installation every time? And this takes me back to the days when we had to install our computer games from floppy disks. And I did not understand the difference. And I was using up all of my computer's memory because I was installing the game every time I put the disk in. The answer is it depends. So I tend to leave mine in there because DeepNote will skip over things it has already installed. It's not going to take up more memory from it, but it depends on what's happening with the runtime. Because sometimes you'll keep running the sheet and it will keep it active. Sometimes the sheet goes inactive and it dumps all of its memory and you have to start over again. Same thing happens with variable names, right? You might define x equals 7 at the beginning, and as long as you have the sheet open and you're working with it, it will remember x equals 7. But if you go off to class for a couple hours and come back to work on it, it might have reset itself. So it really just depends. I wish I had a nice clean answer for it, but that's why I tend to just leave the pip install in there, and whenever I come back in a little while, I'll just run the whole notebook. Andrew has a hand up. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was our question. Thanks for answering it. That was group 6. Does that mean like when you let your workbook go quiet and you lose your hardware your hardware access, that means
Yes.
it drops it and then you would have to install it again?
Yes. So
okay.
DeepNote is very good about telling you when that has happened. In fact, many of you found that issue yesterday when you had opened the sheet and we hadn't done anything with it. DeepNote's very good about telling you that. Google Colab will sometimes tell you and sometimes not. So if you ever go to Google Colab, it just might be different. And so then Zane was kind enough over in the Slack over here, our private Slack channel for any questions you have now or in the weeks to come. Zane posted a guide of how to import your own Excel data into DeepNote. Zane, would you like to talk about this process for just a little bit?
Yeah, so deep note seems to be a bit finicky, especially for the read underscore CSV function. It seems to be a bit finicky with .csv files versus .xlsx files. Namely, whichever one you use, you have to open it with Google Sheets. That's the first step. Second step is you have to change the share permissions to anyone. And then you have to change a little bit at the end of the URL from edit ? To /export. It's all detailed on the document if you want to go, but it takes about a minute. And after that, it should run perfectly fine in deep note.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and this is really useful if your students are accustomed to putting their data in Excel, they can just upload it right there. Terry, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and Zane and Brian, maybe we can take that PDF. I'm trying to do it right now. And if we can maybe link to it in our Google Slides or perhaps somewhere other than Slack in case someone isn't in Slack right now.
Okay.
So I can take care of that during lunchtime, but we'll get that
sounds
in our
great.
slides.
Yeah,
as
I
well.
put the link to the message here, but that's a great idea to get that. We should just put that in our opt-in folder.
Yeah, that's a better idea.
Thank you, Zane. You have now contributed to opt-in. Okay, what else? One group said we managed to plot 3 curves, the same figure with plt.plot, not with pandas. Is it possible to do this in pandas? Let me go. How about we demonstrate live Googling that question. So I'm going to type in pandas plot multiple columns in same figure. So I'm using the technical terms I know. So I'm calling them columns because that's how they're arranged. And I'm using figure because that's what I know Matplotlib calls the white space around it, whereas the actual thing inside is the plot. Hey, Geeks for Geeks. All right. They keep coming up. They've started to do documentation for VPython, so they're starting to come in on my territory, so I'm getting a little nervous about them. So yeah, they should be able to do this. Why, yes, you can do x equals one name and y equals multiple names. That looks like that is doing... Oh dear, that is doing a bar. Oh yeah, kind equals bar over here. Okay, so you could change the kind to the other thing. No, I don't want to log in. You could change the kind to the other type that you want. So yes, apparently you do this. You do it by making a list. So this is what another group I was working with discovered. They wanted to know how to print multiple columns or select columns at once. And so the way you do that is you list all the keys. So these names of the column, they're called keys. You put that into a list inside of the square brackets there. So hooray, we learned how to do this. So if you didn't like having to go and do the plt.plot command, you can also do it this way here. Group 7, would y'all like to share your screen and show us what that magnificent energy graph looked like?
Okay.
Let me go stop my share. Why don't you share what that ended up looking like?
You have to find. Okay. So this one with PLT method here. Because previously we did with this other, we implemented this creating we have here 2 data frame and then putting this, but the graph was not correct in some way.
The range of the data wasn't correct.
Yeah. So then we did with PLT plot.
Very cool.
And that was Ting Wei who did it, who found the work, to give her credit.
You know, we
Very
did
cool.
it in like the last 10 seconds before we have to come back.
Amazing
Yeah.
the pressure that'll put on you. I know we had another group that made one of these, and they actually put up a they got their legend labeled with everything. Does somebody from that group want to share?
Yeah.
Was that me?
It was a couple of groups, and I think y'all's was one. Yes.
Okay. Hold on. Am I sharing the right screen?
You are. It's oh yeah. Now you are. There you go. Why don't you walk us through what you've got?
So we have scatter plots of KEPE and total energy. And then we added the label right after where we tell it which database to look at. So we added a label for KEPE. Here's total energy. And then at the end, you have to add this line, plt.legend, with open brackets to display that little box here on the screen.
Very cool. And so they went the route of using the matplotlib function, plt.scatter. So they're leaving the database part behind, not like what we Googled earlier, but they're using the actual matplotlib function. And now they're unlocking all the stuff you can do with matplotlib in terms of axis labels, the type of graph, et cetera. Really cool. All right, let me get back to here. Awesome, awesome. So let's open the floor for a few minutes. Tell us about, again, over chat or over microphone, what was your experience like as a learner trying this new task? What was similar to working with a spreadsheet? What was different from working with a spreadsheet? And what would you like to learn more about?
So I'll say I found it much faster to switch between different views of the data, like whether you're talking about like a scatter plot or a line plot, or switching your axes or shifting it, compared to, what my students would usually be doing this on Excel or on a graphing calculator or plotting by hand. And it was just really quick to shift between modes of viewing the data.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's faster in the long run. Like once they have it set up, getting through those commands the first time, it can take the students a little while to figure out what they're doing. But once they realize, wait a minute, if I want a graph of velocity instead of position, I just change the word position into velocity. Then it starts to kick forward with some more efficiency. What else? What else does everybody else think?
Jennifer and I had a really weird issue where we could not get our total energy to behave. We had identical code among several people in the whole group, and for some particular reason, Jennifer and I could just not get it to graph. Hers looked just like the kinetic energy graph, and mine looked just like my potential energy graph. I reformatted to add like nice comments so that my data was labeled nicely, and then all of a sudden it started working properly. So that's an interesting life experience and just sort of telling for how weird programming can be sometimes.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. The cool thing about Jupyter Notebook pedagogically is having the code divided into these cells is nice because the students can just focus their attention on 3 to 5 lines at a time. But then when you've got to put them all together at the end, boy, I hope you ran everything in the right order, because otherwise things will get confused. Yeah, Jeff's asking about, I did find the magic command for setting the precision for an entire notebook. Basically, that's a command you can put at the beginning of your Jupyter notebook. Just put that in a code cell. It's going to change the settings for the notebook itself. I'm still learning about magic commands, but I know that's one of them. Patricia's saying setting the vertical axis limits fixed it. So yeah, so y'all learned a lot about all these different graphing options, which is kind of cool.
I liked the explicitness of it, that when I do things in Excel, I have to say, there are 2 sets of boxes, and you put one, your horizontal axis in one box and you vertical axis, and it's somewhat mysterious because you've got to remember that it's column C, and here it's like plot time and velocity. On the other hand, I know that the bio teachers do a ton of work with Excel and Google Sheets, so the students come in having seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
So there's that less friction trying to get them to do things in Excel.
There was an interesting study a few years ago of undergraduate life science majors who they were interviewed about their experiences with programming. And every one of them said, I hate programming. I can't program. Programming is mysterious. It's useless. It's too hard, et cetera, et cetera. And then they asked them, what do you think about Excel? Oh, I love Excel. I can do anything Excel. What do you want me to do in Excel? Da, 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 da. And we're sitting there thinking, Excel is programming. Like by the time you put all those functions in that you need and you make all the settings, you are doing programming. You're just doing it in a grid view where you can see all the numbers that are going on at once. And so one of the neat things about this process is if you can start them out in a spreadsheet that they're comfortable with, and then scaffold that to working with a database, that's a really neat way to ease them into the programming process if you can just do similar tasks. What else? We got time for to hear from a couple more folks.
I think something really nice is that you already have a notebook format, which can have some text, some setting the problem, and then the solutions and the graphs. Because if you leave it up to the students to do the plots and put them together in a report, you get such different formats, and sometimes it's really messy. What's going on here? Where are things?
Yeah, and what's really cool is again, it's a scaffolding opportunity because sure, the first couple notebooks, you give them the formatting. The next notebook, you say, oh, by the way, can you please copy and paste all the settings from the last one? Oh, and you'll need to modify it because we measured this in millimeters instead of meters. Yeah, it's a really neat opportunity. Maybe just a show of reaction emojis or a show in the chat. How do we feel about today's activity compared to yesterday's? Better, worse, about the same? Expand my view here. I'm seeing some thumbs ups. Okay, in the chat, Philip says, much better, but not finished. That's perfectly fine. It seems like each group got the idea and got off to a pretty good start. Trina says, I didn't feel as lost. However, yesterday's was a wow factor. Yes, so now imagine if you had seen this one yesterday, right? I suspect the reaction would be a little bit different. And so I'm glad we had a practice one to sort of get everybody in the water. And now we're pointing out where everything is. I think that worked out well.
And Brian, I really like how Philip talks about not being finished, right? I mean, clearly you have modeled well and I noticed that the other breakout room facilitators, including myself, model that we maybe don't have answers to many of your questions, but we are excited about researching those answers. And it really is a dynamic that I think positions our high school students as experts in ways that are very different than we've been able to do without this kind of technology. So thank you, Philip, for recognizing. I think we would all put the same thing in the chat if Brian had asked us specific questions that we're not finished learning either.
Yeah. And I want to say, we'll talk more about this on Friday, but we don't want this to be a one and done at the end of Friday. Okay, everybody go, good luck. We want to provide opportunities for continued support for you throughout the school year as you try this out. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what that'll look like on Friday when we're wrapping up, but do keep in mind, we are here for you throughout the school year if you go and try this. Okay, why don't we take our last 10 minutes to go over what happens next? So just like yesterday, we're going to take the next 2 hours for individual work time. This is time for you to go take care of anything you need, grab lunch, grab breakfast, grab brunch, whatever you need. Today, I think we're going to leave the Zoom open, Mark, if that's okay. Terry and I were talking, we think it would be great if people wanted to continue working, like Philip is interested in finishing these worksheets here. We'll reopen the breakout room so that you can go back with your group if you would like to spend some time over the next 2 hours doing that. That's perfectly fine. We're going to review your progress and the parking lot questions. I think we talked about those, but we'll put together a little recap. Then back again with choice time. We are going to open some breakout rooms, give you a choice for you to go to. There will be more options available this afternoon because now you're a little bit more comfortable with what you're working with. So you can continue working on either morning activity. If you want to go back with your newfound confidence and try out that falling through the earth activity again, you can do that. If you want to leave that one alone and never go back to it, we certainly understand. I'm actually reminded of some advice that my graduate level computational methods professor gave me, which is something I pass along to my students, which is when you want to learn a new programming language, you need to pick a project to try out that you don't care about and that you're not going to continue with. Because as you learn the language and as you try out that first project, you're going to structure it in a way and you're going to formulate your brain's understanding in a way that you're never going to be able to get out of after you learn what you need. And so he recommended take that first project, try it out, get what you need, put it on the shelf and never touch it again, and then move on to the thing you actually want to do. And so if that's the falling through the earth activity for you, then great. You can put it on the shelf, never touch it again. That's perfectly fine. We've got opportunities for you to adapt a lab. So if you've brought in your own lab data and would like to try adapting a lab activity for a Python Jupyter notebook environment, you can certainly try that. That's a nice extension of what you've worked on this morning. We've got one about assessing computational projects. I think a couple of you asked about that one because now you're getting excited, but eventually you're going to wonder, how do I grade these things? Well, we've got a few articles you can discuss about your options because there's many options. Experiment computational hybrid labs was very popular yesterday. So I'll probably plan to hang out in that breakout room again because that's a lot of my class materials available. Perusing the pickup collection was popular yesterday. Random numbers is popular. Sebastian advertised the Spin First intro quantum material. So Sebastian, if you're around this afternoon, maybe you can go into that breakout room to help folks navigate that. Using external data sets is getting to be a very popular activity. It's one I haven't done a whole lot of. So we've got some links to possible data sets you might bring in for your class. That it works exactly like what you did today. You put a link to the database spreadsheet, whatever is out there, and you just download it into Python. And then the visualizing electrostatics was very popular yesterday. Maybe if some folks from yesterday want to go back in to finish that one, you could also provide some guidance to folks who are starting it out today. And Mark is saying in chat, if you requested a verified educator access to pickup yesterday, he got you approved. So yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, but if you go onto the pickup collection, you do need a verified educator account. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and request that now, and we can email the system admin there who can get you approved probably today. Let's see, Terry and Mark, am I forgetting any logistical business to bring up? Go for it, Jeff. Yeah.
Could someone put a link to the pickup where you would sign up?
Great idea. Let me go do that. Let's see. Here is let me just give you the main link for now. Let me see if I can find where you go request the access. Also, by the way, Pickup is hosting a workshop very similar to this one, 3-day online, designed for faculty without previous experience. And they are marketing this to university introductory course teachers and high school teachers. So don't let the U for undergraduate scare you away, because the Pickup is slowly becoming not an acronym anymore. It's just the name of the it's quickly becoming its own name and not an acronym. Trina is saying if you're an AAPT member, signing in with those credentials make you automatically approved, which is great. All right, I will find that. I'll find that over lunch, and I'll get that link posted for the verification. Unless you recently renewed. Oh no, I am up for renewal. I need to go and pay my dues this week.